After international outrage over more crackdowns by China in Hong Kong, the Canadian government announced new immigration measures to help Hong Kongers come to Canada, taking a tougher stance on China. Joining me now to talk about all this and more is the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Mendicino.
Thanks for having me, Mercedes.
You announced some pretty significant changes in Canadian immigration law relating to people from Hong Kong coming to Canada. You'd previously said that democracy activists would be able to come here. That's something that Hong Kong activists had been asking for. Now you've expanded it to include people who are not just democracy activists, but meet certain levels of employment or education to be able to come here. What led you to this decision to try to allow more Hong Kongers to come to Canada?
Well, first, I was very pleased to announce the new immigration initiative for recent graduates and young Hong Kongers to pursue a faster pathway to becoming Canadian. This will be good for our economy today. It'll be good for our long-term prosperity. We're also going to promote existing immigration routes for those people from Hong Kong who wish to come back to Canada. And finally, we have also announced some additional protections under our asylum system, which reflects the situation on the ground, which we are gravely concerned about. But what we hope out of yesterday's announcement young Hong Kongers will see is an opportunity to come to Canada to work, to pursue their studies should they choose to, and to build the next chapter in their life. And that is about not only strengthening the ties between Canada and the people of Hong Kong, but also bringing a longer-term prosperity to Canada.
This all comes in the wake of China's crackdown against democracy activists. It's been a source of concern for the international community. Some have been calling on countries like Canada to open refugee status to anybody in Hong Kong, not just those who want to come and work and study in Canada. Is that something your government would be willing to consider?
Well, in Canada, we have a robust asylum system, and we have been revered around the world, including by the United Nations, as being the top resettling country in the world. And the immigration plan, which I just announced a little less than 2 weeks ago, does build on that track record. And that isn't just because of the decisions that government has taken. It's because of the generosity and the compassion that Canadians have shown in welcoming the world's most vulnerable, including those who are fleeing persecution.
But if China continues the crackdown in Hong Kong, would you be willing to consider broader measures like extending that refugee status to any citizen of Hong Kong?
We have introduced a number of measures which reflect the situation on the ground. It ensures that failed asylum claimants here in Canada get faster reassessment when it comes to their removal, which may give them a chance to stay in Canada. It also ensures that people who are seeking asylum in Canada will not be disqualified by virtue alone of having been charged under China's national security law. These are two measures which are consistent and build on our reputation around the world when it comes to asylum, and I know that this is something that will be very much part of our plan going forward.
Minister, have you considered more aggressive measures towards China? For example, restricting or eliminating international students coming from China. There's a lot of evidence that senior members of the Chinese Communist Party send their children to study in countries like North America, and activists say that would send a really strong message to the regime, not only about what they are doing in Hong Kong, but what they have done to Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, and as well their behavior around the world. Is your government willing to get tough enough to start cracking down on things like international students?
Well, Mercedes, as you know, Canada has taken a very strong and principled stand when it comes to the developments that we have seen, which have been gravely concerning, including the passage of the national security law by China, the expulsion of 4 democratically elected legislators from the Hong Kong legislature, as well as the arbitrary detention of the 2 Michaels, who are Canadians. And as you know, in each and every one of those instances, we have responded by suspending our extradition treaty with Hong Kong, by restricting goods to Hong Kong, by revising our travel advice to Hong Kong, and by calling for and demanding the consular access be restored, which is now something that we have achieved when it comes to the 2 Michaels, but they need to be released. They are being arbitrarily detained, and they need to be released. And yesterday's announcement does come against that backdrop, and we will continue to take those strong and principled stands as is necessary.
Okay, it doesn't really answer the question I asked you, but I want to move on to asking you about whether you are prepared to evacuate the 300,000 Canadians who live in Hong Kong if necessary.
Well, as you know, Mercedes, the 300,000 Canadian citizens who are currently living in Hong Kong enjoy a right of return, and subject to following the COVID health protocols, which are in place to protect all of us, they can come back whenever they choose. We've also announced a number of different pathways, which allows immediate family members and now broader family members who have relatives here in Canada to come and visit in Canada, and that applies to those relatives who live in Hong Kong. And we will continue to find ways to reunite families. No government has done more when it comes to reuniting families in the history of this country. I'm proud of that record.
Changing gears to look south of the border, a new president expected in January. Of course, it will be President Joe Biden. He's currently the president-elect. You've stated on Friday that you thought there was some opportunities there for Canadian immigration with the new presidency. How do you see your file playing out with Joe Biden in the White House?
Well, first, I think we were all pleased that the first call that President-elect Biden made was to Prime Minister Trudeau, and I think it underscores the special and unique relationship that exists between Canada and the United States. We have the longest unguarded border in the world. We share that border, and the movement of people across that international border is very important. When it comes to our immigration policies, Mercedes, we will take decisions which are in the best interests of Canadians and reflect Canadian values. And for my part, that means introducing an immigration plan about 2 weeks ago that is focused on jobs, that is focused on economic recovery, and that is focused on addressing the long-term demographic challenges which our country is facing. That's why I'm excited about seeing this plan come to fruition. And certainly in the midst of this pandemic, there are many opportunities which are abound.
Minister, one last question for you. How has COVID-19 affected immigration to Canada, and when do you see this getting back on track?
Well, there's no doubt that COVID-19 has impacted immigration as it has impacted every aspect of our lives. I think that you will see that there is a reflection of that in the levels that we'd set for 2020. But I'm also optimistic that we have taken some real lessons coming out of the pandemic. And certainly from where we were at the beginning and the onset of COVID-19 to where we are now, we are making tremendous progress by investing additional resources, by leveraging technology. We're importing more digital into our processes, and by streamlining all of our processes so that we are seeing those immigration outcomes occur as quickly as possible. And that's what our plan does. Our plan will build on those lessons. It will ensure that we remain competitive, and it will allow us to drive our economic recovery going forward.
Minister, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always great to be with you, Mercedes.